1 year ago, I decided that I want to make my own game. And in this video, I will show you the journey I took from having the idea to publish my first ever demo on Steam, which is online and free to play for everyone, by the way. But let's get back to the beginning. First, I had to get an idea what I want to create. After I listened to some podcasts of successful indie game devs, I decided to take on the 2.5D rage game genre. Games like Getting Over It, a difficult game about climbing, and Jump King have stolen hundreds of hours of my life. And to this day I still play them, because in my opinion there simply aren't enough audio games out there. So now I had to come up with a good idea, and after a few weeks of brainstorming I finally had one. What if we had a normal character, like in the games mentioned before? But instead of legs, we have a giant spring. And instead of climbing, we have to compress the spring to release a calculated jump to make our way up the level. I think this is something unique and could work out pretty well. I was really happy with this idea, so I sat down and started building the character. And after a few weeks of messing around in Blender, implementing it in Unity, and almost losing my mind because nothing worked, this is what I ended up with. I know, it looks weird without animations and textures, so a bit more work and voila! I think that's decent enough for my first game. What I enjoyed the most is the implementation of the mouse controls. You just left click and hold while pulling down your mouse. When you release the left mouse button, your character jumps in the air. And the angle you pull down your mouse determines the angle you jump sideways. So if I pull my mouse down to the left at a 45-degree angle, my character will jump 45 degrees up and to the right. And the more you compress your spring, the higher the jump. Additionally, to help the player visualize this a bit more, I made the character always look in jump direction. Then, I spent a few days jumping around, messing with the different settings and just having fun. And that's when I realized, this can be an actual game. I just have to make it work. Now I had to figure out what the levels will look like. 4D games have a unique style of levels. They are mostly designed to have a clear path to get up, and many possibilities to fall back down again. You give the player small safe spots to relax and enjoy their progress, but always make it clear, mess up the next jump and you can lose it all again. So, after brainstorming for a few days, I came up with this. What if we had a big storage rack? The ones you see in those massive warehouses, stretching over several floors. Now imagine that it's filled with pallets, but there are gaps between them. And to get to the next level, you have to jump from pallet to pallet, make it all the way up, with the constant fear of falling into the gaps and back down again. I like this idea, so back to Blender. I modeled the storage rack, painted it in Substance Painter, modeled and textured the pallets and all the items on them. And if you ever ask yourself why my game took 1 year to get to this stage, this is why, you see, I decided to model and texture every asset in my game by myself, for whatever reason. Now a little bit of that, a little bit of that, and boom! Main obstacle for level 1 done. Now I had to give this world a soul. After watching the podcast of Pontypants with Thomas Brush, I was really inspired of how he approached this manner, and I gave it a similar shot. First I downloaded the Volumetric Fog and Mist 2 plugin. Then I gave the whole scene a fog. Next I created a little ocean using Shader Graph, which honestly was a huge pain in the ass. Then I designed some mountains for the background and placed them far behind to give the level some kind of depth. And then I had one last thing to fix. I think it's obvious that the default Skybox isn't an option. Again, I got inspired by the podcast I mentioned before, and I created a shader that will have a color gradient with 3 different colors as the Skybox. I made it work in combination with these sphere objects, and in the beginning we have this late afternoon sky with a slight orange touch to the top. Then I place the sphere on the end of the first level, and the closer the player gets to this sphere, the sky will change to whatever color gradient I've set up in the sphere. In this example, the orange brightens up into a light yellow. With this, I could place as many spheres I want in the levels and make the colors change, to give every level a different feeling and a different atmosphere. I really liked this approach and just went along with it. Now it was just playing around, creating different levels and having fun in the engine. Now I had to pay someone on Fiverr to design my capsule art, found people on different gaming communities to help translate and localize my Steam page, and finally delivered my builds to Steam. And they got approved. So now the Steam page and, even more important, the demo page are both online. It would mean the world to me if you give it a shot, wishlist it, and leave a review what you think about the demo so far. The full game is in development and will include many more levels, new obstacles, new mechanics, and much more. So the only question left is, can you beat my demo?